Jake Morrison stood at the viewing window of the transport ship and watched Nexus Station grow larger. The massive space station looked like a metal city floating in the darkness. Lights blinked along its surface like stars. Jake had never seen anything so big in space before. "You sure about this, Jake?" Captain Lisa Rodriguez asked as she walked up beside him. She was his commanding officer and had been his friend for 5 years. "Command isn't happy you came here instead of reporting for your new assignment." Jake nodded, but didn't look away from the station. "I'm sure. This tournament only happens every 5 years. I might not get another chance." Lisa sighed. "The Tournament of Champions isn't a game, Jake. Warriors from all over the galaxy come here. Some of them are twice your size and have been fighting for decades." "I know," Jake said quietly. He was 28 years old and had fought in 3 wars on the outer rim of human space. He wasn't the biggest or strongest soldier, but he was smart and careful. That had kept him alive when others died. The transport docked with Nexus Station an hour later. Jake grabbed his small bag and followed, the other passengers through the airlock. The station was even more impressive on the inside. The main corridor was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. Aliens of different species moved through the halls. Jake saw tall, thin beings with blue skin, short, furry creatures that walked on 4 legs and others he couldn't even describe. Commander Alex Turner was waiting for Jake at the registration desk. Turner was a big man with gray hair and cold eyes. He looked at Jake like he was disappointed. "Sergeant Morrison," Turner said, "I wasn't expecting any humans to register this year. Sir, I have the right to compete. The rules say any warrior from a coalition species can enter," Jake replied. Turner smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "That's true. But the Tournament of Champions is serious business. The winners get to choose from the most valuable alien specimens we've captured. These aren't pets, soldier. They're strategic assets." Jake nodded. He had read about the tournament before coming here. Every 5 years, the Galactic Defense Coalition held this competition. Warriors fought in different challenges over 7 days. The best fighters won the right to bond with rare alien creatures from newly discovered worlds. Some of these aliens had special powers. Others were very smart or strong. All of them were valuable. Turner handed Jake a data pad. "Your room, assignment and schedule. First trial is tomorrow morning. Try not to embarrass your species." Jake took the pad and walked away. He found his room and dropped off his bag, then decided to explore the station. The tournament area was in the lower levels. Jake took an elevator down and found himself in a large open space with training areas and viewing rooms. Through a thick glass wall he could see where they kept the alien specimens. Dozens of different creatures were in separate cells. Some looked like large cats with metal claws. Others had tentacles or wings or glowing eyes. Jake pressed his face against the glass and studied them. Most of the creatures were impressive. There was a red bird-like alien that shot fire from its mouth. A wolf creature with silver fur prowled its cage. In one corner, a being made of living crystal sat perfectly still, but Jake could feel power coming from it. Then he saw something that made him stop. In a small cell at the far end was a tiny gray alien. It was about 3 feet tall, with large, black eyes and thin arms. Unlike the other creatures, this one wasn't moving around or showing off. It just sat quietly in the corner of its cell, watching everything. Jake read the information on the wall next to the cell. Species 47B, non-aggressive, limited intelligence, no apparent abilities. Someone had written useless in red letters next to the official description, but Jake looked closer at the small alien. Its eyes moved constantly, watching the other creatures, the guards, and the visitors. When those big black eyes met Jake's, he felt something strange. For just a second, it seemed like the alien was looking into his mind. "Planning your choice already?" a voice said behind him. Jake turned to see a woman in a white coat. She was about 40 years old, with brown hair and kind eyes. "Dr. Patricia Wells," she said, holding out her hand. "I'm the xenobiologist studying these specimens." Jake shook her hand. "Sergeant Jake Morrison, just looking around." Dr. Wells glanced at the small gray alien. Interesting choice to focus on. Most people walk right past that one. What can you tell me about it? Jake asked. Dr. Wells looked around to make sure no one else was listening, then spoke quietly. Officially, nothing special. We found it on a dead planet covered with old ruins. It was the only living thing there. And unofficially, that planet had technology we don't understand. Massive cities, but empty for thousands of years. Makes you wonder what happened to the species that built them. She paused. And why this little guy was the only survivor? Jake looked back at the small alien. It was still watching him with those intelligent eyes. The other contestants aren't interested in it, Dr. Wells continued. They want the strong ones, the fighters. Can't blame them, really. Jake spent another hour walking around the specimen area. He watched a crystalline warrior from the Vex Imperium test her strength against a training dummy. A massive reptilian called Thok lifted weights that would crush a human. Other aliens demonstrated powers like telekinesis and energy blasts. But Jake kept thinking about the small gray alien sitting alone in its cell. Something about it reminded him of his childhood on the frontier colony where he grew up. His father had been a xenobiologist who studied animal behavior. He taught Jake that the most dangerous predators were often the ones that looked harmless. The next morning, Jake woke early and went to the arena for the first trial. The rules were simple. Elimination matches in zero gravity. Lose and go home. Win and advance to the next round. Jake had trained in zero gravity before, but fighting in it was different. His first opponent was a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. The creature was fast and strong, but it relied too much on brute force. Jake used the walls and ceiling to move around, staying out of reach until his opponent got tired. Then he struck quickly and won. After the match, Jake walked back to the specimen viewing area. The small gray alien was still in its corner, but now it seemed to be drawing something in the dirt on its cell floor. Jake couldn't see what it was from this distance. That evening, Jake ate dinner alone in the station's cafeteria. Tomorrow would bring the second trial, and the competition would get harder. But he wasn't thinking about the fights. He was thinking about ancient ruins on a dead planet, and a small alien that might not be as helpless as everyone believed. Outside the cafeteria windows, stars sparkled in the darkness of space. Jake had a feeling that this tournament would change his life in ways he couldn't imagine yet. The second day brought a survival challenge in the station's environmental testing chambers. Jake found himself in a desert simulation with extreme heat and limited water. His opponent was Viktor Petrov, a tough soldier from Earth's Russian naval forces. Viktor was bigger and stronger, but Jake knew how to survive in harsh conditions from his time on frontier worlds. While Viktor tried to hunt Jake down directly, Jake used the environment to his advantage. He found shade, conserved water, and waited for the right moment. When Viktor became dehydrated and tired, Jake struck quickly and won the match. "Lucky shot," Viktor said afterward, but his eyes showed respect. Jake advanced to the next round, along with 6 other warriors. The competition was getting serious now. Each remaining fighter had proven they were dangerous. That afternoon, Jake visited the specimen area again. Dr. Wells was there, making notes on her datapad. "How's your little friend doing?" she asked, nodding toward the small gray alien. Jake looked at the creature. It was drawing in the dirt again, using one thin finger to make marks and symbols. "What's it making?" "I've been wondering the same thing," Dr. Wells said. "The patterns are too complex to be random, almost like it's writing or mapping something." Jake moved closer to the glass. The small alien looked up at him, and again he felt that strange connection. The creature's large eyes seemed to hold secrets that went back thousands of years. "Tell me more about the planet where you found it," Jake said. Dr. Wells glanced around, then pulled Jake to a quiet corner. "The official report says it was just a dead world with old ruins. But I've seen the full survey data. That planet had cities that stretched across entire continents. The technology was far beyond anything we know. Some of the structures were still powered after thousands of years. What happened to the species that built them? No one knows, There were no bodies, no signs of war or disease. They just disappeared, except for this one. She pointed to the small alien. We found it in what looked like a library or data center. It was just sitting there waiting. Jake felt the chill run down his spine. Waiting for what? Maybe waiting for someone to find it, Dr. Wells said quietly. The third trial was a test of tactical thinking. The contestants had to lead simulated troops through a complex battle scenario. Jake's military training helped him here. He understood how to use terrain, how to coordinate different units, and how to adapt when plans went wrong. His opponent was Keth Prime, an insectoid warrior queen with natural tactical abilities. Her species fought as hive minds with perfect coordination between soldiers. But Jake had learned something important during his years of fighting. Sometimes the best strategy was to do the unexpected. While Keth Prime organized her forces in perfect formations, Jake split his troops into small groups that attacked from different directions. He used distractions and false retreats to confuse the enemy. In the end, his human unpredictability defeated her alien perfection. Interesting approach, Keth Prime said after the match. Your species fights without pattern or logic. It is effective. That evening, Jake returned to the specimen viewing area. Most of the other contestants were there too, studying their potential prizes. The crystalline warrior, Zara 9, stood in front of a cage holding a creature that looked like living fire. Thok was examining a massive armored beast that could probably crush a tank, but Jake went straight to the small gray alien cell. The creature was still drawing in the dirt, but now Jake could see the patterns more clearly. They looked like star maps with lines connecting different points. You keep coming back to that one, a voice said behind him. Jake turned to see Viktor Petrov. The Russian soldier looked puzzled. It's not much to look at, Viktor continued. No claws, no armor, no weapons. Why waste time on something useless? Jake didn't answer. He had learned long ago that the most important things were often the ones other people ignored. The others think you're crazy, Viktor said. They're betting you'll come to your senses and choose a real fighter if you make it to the finals. What do you think? Jake asked. Viktor studied Jake's face carefully. I think you see something we don't. That makes you dangerous. The fourth trial tested combat skills in urban environments. Jake had to fight through a maze of buildings and streets while avoiding traps and obstacles. His opponent was a warrior from a species that could turn invisible. This was the hardest fight yet. Jake couldn't see his enemy most of the time. He had to rely on small sounds, moving shadows, and instinct. Several times, claws whistled past his head by inches, but Jake had fought invisible enemies before on the outer rim. He knew how to track them by the disturbances they made in dust and air. When the invisible warrior finally made a mistake and revealed its position, Jake was ready. He won the match, but just barely. Now only 4 contestants remained. Jake, Zara 9, Thok, and a warrior called Nex 7 from a machine species. The semifinals would determine who got first choice of the alien specimens. Jake's semifinal opponent was Zara 9, the crystalline warrior who had been the tournament favorite from the beginning. She was fast, strong, and nearly indestructible. Her crystal body could reflect energy weapons and resist physical attacks. The arena for this fight was a complex environment with multiple levels, obstacles, and changing gravity fields. Jake knew he couldn't match Zara 9 in direct combat. He had to use everything else. Jake spent the first part of the fight running and hiding, learning the arena's layout while Zara 9 pursued him. She was powerful, but predictable. She relied on her natural advantages instead of thinking tactically. Jake led her into areas where her crystal body worked against her. In zero-gravity sections, her weight made her clumsy. Near the energy barriers, her reflective surface created blinding light that confused her own vision. The turning point came when Jake realized that Zara 9's greatest strength was also her weakness. Her crystal body was rigid and couldn't bend, like human joints. Jake maneuvered her into a narrow passage where she couldn't move freely, then used the environment to trap her. Impossible, Zara 9 said as she struggled in the tight space. Humans are weak. You cannot defeat me. You're right that humans are weak, Jake said. That's why we learn to be smart instead. When the match ended and Jake was declared the winner, the crowd watching on screens throughout the galaxy went silent. No one had expected a human to make it this far, much less defeat the tournament favorite. Jake walked to the specimen viewing area one more time before the final match. The small gray alien was waiting for him, standing right against the glass. Their eyes met, and Jake felt that strange connection again. This time, it was stronger. For just a moment, he thought he heard a voice in his mind, speaking words he didn't understand but somehow knew the meaning of. "Thank you for seeing me," the voice seemed to say. Dr. Wells approached him. "The final match is tomorrow. Win that, and you get first choice of any specimen here." Jake nodded, still looking at the small alien. "I already know which one I want." "Really? Which one?" Jake pointed to the tiny gray creature. Dr. Wells looked shocked. "Jake, I think you should reconsider. That creature has no combat abilities, no special powers. The military expects winners to choose valuable assets. Maybe value isn't always about power," Jake said. The next morning, Jake faced Next 7 in the tournament finals. The machine warrior was everything Jake wasn't: precise, logical, and tireless. But Jake had learned something important during this tournament. Sometimes the best way to win wasn't to be the strongest or fastest. Sometimes it was just to be human. When the final match ended and Jake stood victorious, he knew his real journey was just beginning. The small gray alien in cell 47B had been waiting for someone to find it. Jake had a feeling it had been waiting specifically for him. The selection ceremony took place in the main arena with cameras broadcasting to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Jake stood on the platform with the other 3 tournament winners. As the overall champion, he got to choose first. "Commander," Turner stepped forward with a microphone. "Sergeant Morrison, you have earned the right to select any specimen from our collection. The betting pools heavily favor you choosing the fire-breathing Pyrax or perhaps the psychic Mindweaver. What is your decision?" Jake walked past the cages holding the most powerful creatures. The firebird spread its wings and roared. The crystal beast pulsed with energy. The wolf creature with metal claws prowled back and forth. Alien spectators in the stands whispered excitedly, placing last-minute bets. Jake stopped in front of the small cell marked Species 47B. The tiny gray alien sat in its corner, watching him with those large dark eyes. The crowd grew quiet. Then confused murmurs started spreading. "I choose this one," Jake said clearly. The arena fell completely silent. Then the noise exploded. Aliens in the stands made sounds of disbelief. Human military officers looked angry. Even the other tournament winners seemed shocked. "Are you certain, Sergeant?" Commander Turner asked through gritted teeth. "Perhaps you'd like to reconsider?" "I'm certain," Jake replied. A technician brought out the bonding collar, a device that would create a mental link between Jake and his chosen alien. As they placed it around the small creature's neck, Jake knelt down to its level. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Jake. I'm going to call you Finn." The alien called Finn looked up at him and nodded once. It was a simple gesture, but Jake felt something change in his mind. A new presence appeared there, quiet and careful, like someone entering a room without making noise. Dr. Wells approached them after the ceremony ended. Most of the crowd had left, disappointed by Jake's choice. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she said. "Command is not happy. They expected you to choose something they could study for military applications." Jake helped Finn stand up. The alien was lighter than he expected, maybe 60 pounds. "What happens now?" "Officially, you have a week to bond with your specimen before your next assignment. Unofficially, I suggest you keep a low profile. Some people are already calling. Your choice a waste of everyone's time." Jake and Finn were given quarters in the station's military section. The room was small but comfortable, with 2 beds and a viewing window that showed space outside. Finn sat on his bed and continued drawing patterns, this time on a datapad Dr. Wells had provided. Jake watched the alien work. The patterns were definitely star maps, but more detailed than anything he had seen before. They showed not just star positions, but also travel routes, resource locations, and what looked like historical markers. "You understand what I'm saying, don't you?" Jake asked. Finn looked up from his drawing and nodded. Then he pointed to his own chest and made a sound. "Finn." His voice was soft and musical. Over the next few days, Jake and Finn developed a way to communicate. Finn couldn't speak many human words, but he was incredibly smart. He learned hand signals quickly and could understand complex ideas when Jake explained them slowly. Jake discovered that Finn had perfect memory. The alien could recall every detail of everything he had seen or heard. When Jake asked about the ruins on his home planet, Finn drew detailed maps of entire cities. The buildings were beautiful and elegant, nothing like human architecture. "How old are these cities?" Jake asked. Finn held up his hands multiple times, trying to show a large number. Then he pointed to the stars outside their window and made a gesture that suggested vast amounts of time. Jake was beginning to understand that Finn's people, the Akani, had been building cities when humans were still living in caves. But something had happened to them. The cities were empty now and Finn was alone. On the fourth day, Dr. Wells visited them with disturbing news. "Command has decided to cut your bonding time short," she said. "You're being assigned to investigate pirate attacks in the Outer Rim. You leave tomorrow." "That seems convenient," Jake said suspiciously. "Right when I'm starting to learn about Finn's abilities." Dr. Wells nodded grimly. "I think some people want to get you away from the station so they can study Finn without interference. There are rumors that military intelligence has been asking questions about Species 47B. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He sat by the window looking out at the stars while Finn drew more maps. The alien seemed agitated, making small sounds and drawing faster than usual. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. Finn pointed to his drawings. Then made a gesture like something being taken away. Jake understood. Finn was worried about being separated from him. "I won't let them take you," Jake promised. Finn looked at him with those large eyes, and for the first time Jake heard a voice in his mind. It was soft and careful, speaking words that weren't quite human language but that Jake somehow understood. "My people call me Finn Kateth. I am the last guardian of the old knowledge. I have waited many cycles for one like you to come." Jake nearly fell out of his chair. "You can speak directly to my mind? The bonding collar allows it, but only with those who are ready to listen. Your species is young but shows promise. You see beyond appearances to truth. What happened to your people?" Finn's mental voice grew sad. "We were builders and teachers, not warriors. When the galaxy became violent, we chose to hide rather than fight. We went to secret places and waited for the darkness to pass. But you stayed behind? Guardians remained to watch and wait. When worthy species appeared, we would decide if it was time to return." Finn paused. "You are the first to choose a guardian freely, without knowing what we are." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What does that mean?" "It means the test is not finished. Others will try to use our knowledge for war. You must help me reach my people before that happens." The next morning, their transport ship left Nexus Station. Jake and Finn were assigned to a small courier vessel with a crew of 6 humans. Captain Lisa Rodriguez had requested to command the mission, which made Jake suspicious. "This isn't a normal assignment, is it?" Jake asked her privately. Lisa looked uncomfortable. "Command has orders to deliver you to investigate the pirate attacks. But I've heard rumors about a secondary mission involving your alien friend." "What kind of secondary mission?" "The kind where you might not make it back to file a report." That afternoon, while Jake was in his quarters with Finn, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Over the communication system, Lisa's voice crackled. "All hands to battle stations. We're under attack by unknown vessels." Jake grabbed his weapon and started toward the bridge, but Finn caught his arm. "This is not random," Finn said in his mind. "The attack comes too soon, too precisely. Someone arranged this." Jake paused. Finn was right. Pirates didn't usually attack military couriers, and they certainly didn't know the ship's exact route and timing. "They want you," Jake realized. "This whole mission was a setup to get you away from the station where they could take you without witnesses." Finn nodded gravely. "We must escape. My people's location must not fall into the wrong hands." Jake made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Instead of going to the bridge to help fight the attackers, he led Finn toward the ship's small escape pods. "I hope you know where we're going," Jake said as they climbed into the pod. Finn was already working with the navigation system, his thin fingers moving across the controls with surprising skill. "I know the way to safety. Trust me," Jake Morrison, as their escape pod launched into space. Jake watched their ship being captured by the attacking vessels. He had just abandoned his military career, his friends, and his entire life. But looking at Finn working calmly at the controls, Jake knew he had made the right choice. The real adventure was just beginning. The escape pod drifted through space for 6 hours before Finn managed to get the engines working properly. Jake watched his friend work with the controls, moving with a confidence that showed he understood technology far better than anyone had suspected. "How do you know so much about our ships?" Jake asked. Finn's mental voice carried a hint of amusement. "My people have been watching your species for many years. We study the technology of all races to understand their development. Your ships are well designed but could be improved." Jake looked at the star charts Finn was creating on the navigation system. They showed routes through space that no human had ever mapped. "Where are we going?" "To a place where we will be safe while I contact my people. But first we must gather supplies and find a better ship. This pod will not survive a long journey." Finn guided them to a small trading station in an asteroid field. The station was run by independent merchants who asked few questions and traded with anyone who had credits. Jake used his military savings to buy food, water, and passage on a cargo ship heading toward the outer rim. The cargo ship captain was a woman named Beth Carter, who had been running supplies to frontier colonies for 20 years. She was tough and practical, with gray hair and suspicious eyes. "You two are running from something," she said as they settled into their passenger cabin. "Military types don't usually travel on cargo haulers with alien friends." "It's complicated," Jake said. "It always is. Long as you don't bring trouble to my ship, I don't care what you're running from." But trouble found them anyway. 3 days into their journey, Beth's ship was intercepted by military vessels. Over the communication system, a familiar voice demanded permission to board and search the ship. "This is Colonel Victor Petrov of the Galactic Defense Coalition. We are searching for a stolen military asset and a deserter. Prepare to be boarded." Jake felt sick. Victor had been promoted and given command of a strike force, probably with orders to capture Finn at any cost. Beth looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. "Friend of yours?" "Not exactly," Jake replied. Finn touched Jake's arm. "I can hide us, but we must reach the cargo hold quickly." They ran through the ship's corridors while Beth argued with Victor over the radio, trying to buy them time. In the cargo hold, Finn led Jake to a stack of supply containers and began working with a small device he pulled from his clothing. "What is that?" Jake asked. "A Chani technology. It will bend light around us, making us invisible to their sensors." Finn activated the device and suddenly the air around them shimmered like heat waves. Victor's soldiers searched the ship thoroughly, but they couldn't find Jake and Finn. After 2 hours, the strike force left, warning Beth that hiding fugitives was a serious crime. "Well, that was exciting," Beth said when she found them in the cargo hold. "Want to tell me what this is really about?" Jake looked at Finn, who nodded. "My friend here isn't what he appears to be. His people are very advanced, and some humans want to use their technology for war." Beth studied Finn carefully. "Advanced how?" Finn stepped forward and spoke aloud, his voice clearer than Jake had heard before. "My people built cities among the stars when yours were learning to make fire. We have knowledge that could help your species grow, or destroy it if misused." "Holy stars," Beth whispered. "You're from one of the ancient civilizations, aren't you? The ones that disappeared thousands of years ago." "We did not disappear. We chose to hide until younger races proved they were ready for our gifts." Beth was quiet for a long moment. "And you think humans are ready?" Finn looked at Jake. "Some are. Jake Morrison chose me not for power, but because he saw I was alone and needed help. That gives me hope for your species. Over the next few days, As Beth's ship traveled toward the outer rim, Finn shared more of his people's history with Jake. The Achani had once had an empire that spanned half the galaxy. They were builders and teachers who helped younger species develop technology and culture. But as the galaxy became more violent with constant wars between different alien races, the Achani grew tired of seeing their gifts used for destruction. They decided to withdraw from galactic civilization and wait for a better time. We established hidden colonies in remote systems, Finn explained. Guardian stations were left behind to watch the development of various species. When a race showed wisdom instead of just power, we would consider making contact. And humans showed wisdom? Jake asked doubtfully, thinking of all the wars he had fought in. Not as a whole, but individuals did. You proved that some humans can see beyond immediate gain to larger consequences. The cargo ship reached its destination, a frontier world called Haven's Rest. Beth helped them transfer to a small courier ship she knew was for sale. The ship was old but reliable, with long-range capabilities and stealth systems. This should get you where you need to go without being detected, Beth said. But be careful. Word is spreading that there's a big reward for information about you two. Jake piloted their new ship away from Haven's Rest, while Finn worked with the navigation systems. Their destination was a set of coordinates that Finn said would lead them to one of his people's hidden colonies. The journey took them through parts of space that human ships rarely visited. They passed dead systems with planets that had been stripped of resources by ancient mining operations. They saw the remains of space stations built by civilizations that no longer existed. The galaxy is full of ghosts, Jake said as they flew, past the wreckage of a massive space habitat. Not ghosts, Finn corrected. Lessons. Each fallen civilization teaches us something about the dangers of power without wisdom. On the 5th day of their journey, their ship's sensors detected something following them. It was Victor's strike force somehow tracking them despite their stealth systems. How are they finding us? Jake asked. Finn studied the sensor readings and his expression grew grim. They must have placed a tracking device on me during the tournament. Something so small I did not detect it. Jake checked their position. They were still 2 days away from Finn's coordinates. Can we lose them? Not in this ship. But there is another way. Finn began entering new coordinates into the navigation system. We will lead them into the Veil. What's the Veil? A region of space where my people tested their most dangerous technologies. Ships that enter without proper shielding are destroyed by energy storms, but I know the safe routes. Jake felt a chill. And Victor doesn't? No. If he follows us, his ships will be lost. They changed course toward the coordinates Finn had entered. Behind them, Victor's ships matched their movements, steadily gaining ground. Jake could see them on the long-range sensors, 3 heavy cruisers, and a dozen fighter escorts. As they approached the Veil, space itself began to look different. Purple and blue energy danced between the stars like lightning. The ship's instruments went crazy, showing readings that made no sense. The energy storms are starting, Finn said. Follow my directions exactly, or we will die. Jake gripped the controls as Finn guided them into the chaotic region. Energy waves crashed against their shields like ocean surf. The ship shook and groaned under the stress. Behind them, Victor's ships hesitated at the edge of the storm zone. Over the radio, Jake heard Victor's voice. Attention, fugitive vessel. Return immediately, or we will follow you into the anomaly. He's not bluffing, Jake said. Then he is a fool, Finn replied sadly. Victor's ships entered the Veil and immediately ran into trouble. Without Finn's guidance, they flew directly into an energy storm. Jake watched on the sensors as one of the cruisers was torn apart by forces that human science couldn't explain. The other ships retreated, damaged and unable to pursue further. I'm sorry about your friend, Finn said quietly. Jake felt sick, but he nodded. He made his choice. We all did. They flew deeper into the Veil, following routes that only Finn knew. After 6 hours of careful navigation, they emerged into normal space near a star system that appeared on no human charts. Welcome to New Ashani, Finn said. Jake looked at the sensors and gasped. The system contained dozens of planets, most of them clearly artificial. Massive space stations orbited the stars, and ships moved between the worlds in patterns that suggested a thriving civilization. "Your people aren't hiding anymore," Jake said. "Not here. This is our last stronghold where we wait and plan for the day we can return to the galaxy safely." Finn paused. "That day may come sooner than we expected, thanks to you." As their ship approached the nearest planet, Jake realized that his adventure was far from over. He had helped Finn escape from those who would misuse Echani knowledge, but now he had to convince an entire civilization that humanity was ready for their gifts. The key, hardest test was still ahead. New Echani was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The planet looked like a work of art, with cities that seemed to grow from the landscape like living things. Towers spiraled into the sky, connected by bridges that glowed with soft light. Parks and gardens were everywhere, creating a perfect balance between nature and technology. Finn guided their ship to a landing platform near the planet's capital city. As they descended, Jake saw Echani people for the first time. They looked similar to Finn but came in different sizes and colors. Some were tall and elegant, others were small and quick. All of them moved with the same quiet grace. "My people have been watching our approach," Finn said. "They are curious about you, but also worried. No outsider has come here in over 1,000 years." A group of Echani waited for them at the landing platform. They wore simple robes in various colors and carried no visible weapons. Their leader was a tall female with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "Finn Kateth," she said in a voice like music. "You have returned, and you bring a stranger." Finn bowed respectfully. "Honored Kalasin, I bring Jake Morrison of Earth. He chose me freely when he could have chosen power instead. He has protected me from those who would use our knowledge for war." Kalasin studied Jake with those ancient eyes. "A human, your species, is young and violent. Why should we trust one of your kind?" Jake stepped forward but kept his hands visible and non-threatening. "I don't expect you to trust me because I'm human, but maybe you can trust me because of what I've done. I gave up everything I knew to protect Finn." "Words are easy," another Echani said. This one was shorter but radiated authority. "Actions matter more." "Then judge me by my actions," Jake replied. "I chose the weakest prisoner when I could have chosen the strongest. I abandoned my military career to protect Finn's secrets. I led him home even though I knew I might never see my own people again." The Echani council members talked among themselves in their musical language. Jake couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the disagreement in their tones. Some seemed favorable, others suspicious. Finally, Kalasin spoke again. "We will take you to the Council of Guardians. They will decide what to do with you." Capital City was even more impressive up close. The buildings seemed to be made of living crystal that changed color with the light. Gardens floated in the air without any visible support. People moved through the streets on paths of soft energy that carried them where they wanted to go. "How long did it take to build all this?" Jake asked. "Many thousands of years," Finn replied. "My people build slowly but permanently. These structures will last until the stars grow cold." The Council of Guardians met in a great hall at the city's center. 12 ancient Echani sat in a circle, each one representing a different aspect of their civilization. There were builders, teachers, healers, and others whose roles Jake didn't understand. As Jake stood in the center of the circle, he felt their minds touching his thoughts gently, reading his intentions and memories. It wasn't invasive like an attack, but more like a careful examination. "This human speaks truth," one of the council members said. "His mind holds no deception about his reasons for coming here." "But his species is still violent," another argued. "Even if this one is worthy, can we trust the others? They wage wars constantly." Jake found his voice. "You're right that humans fight wars, but we also help each other, explore the unknown, and try to build better futures. We're not perfect, but we're learning." "Learning what?" Kalasin asked. "That strength without wisdom is dangerous. That different doesn't mean enemy. That sometimes the most important thing is to protect something instead of conquering it." The council debated for hours while Jake waited. He could hear the musical rise and fall of their voices but couldn't understand the words. Finn sat beside him, occasionally offering quiet encouragement through their mental link. Finally, the eldest council member spoke. Jake Morrison of Earth, we have decided to test your species more thoroughly, but first you must face an immediate challenge. Alarms began sounding throughout the city. Through the Great Hall's windows, Jake could see ships approaching the planet. They were human military vessels, heavily armed and moving in attack formation. How did they find us? Jake asked. Finn's expression was grim. Viktor Petrov survived. The Veil. He must have tracked our route and found another way through. One of the council members was receiving information through a communication device. 18 ships total. They are demanding we surrender the human trader and the stolen alien asset. They followed us here, Jake said, feeling sick with guilt. I've brought war to your peaceful world. Kayla Sin stood up. Perhaps this is the test we needed. How do you suggest we respond to this threat, Jake Morrison? Jake thought quickly. The Achani had advanced technology, but they were peaceful by nature. The human fleet was smaller but designed for combat. People would die on both sides unless he found another way. Let me talk to them, Jake said. Victor knows me. Maybe I can convince him to leave peacefully. And if you cannot? Jake looked around the circle of ancient faces. Then we fight together, or we find a third option. The council allowed Jake to use their communication systems to contact the human fleet. Victor's face appeared on the screen, showing the scars he had received in the Veil. Hello, Jake, Victor said. You've led us on quite a chase. This doesn't have to end in fighting, Victor. These people aren't our enemies. That's not my decision to make. Command wants the alien and the technology. You can come peacefully, or we can take them by force. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The Achani could destroy your fleet without effort if they wanted to. Victor smiled coldly. Then why haven't they? I think they're as peaceful as they appear. Perfect targets. The communication ended. Jake turned to the council. He won't listen. They're going to attack. Then we must defend ourselves, Kala Sin said sadly. But we do not wish to destroy your people unnecessarily. There might be another way, Jake said, an idea forming in his mind. Finn, can your people disable their ships without killing the crews? Yes, but it would require us to reveal our true capabilities. Once your military knows what we can do, they will never stop trying to take it, unless we give them a reason to stop. Jake explained his plan to the council. It was risky and would change everything, but it might prevent a war. When Victor's ships attacked, they were met by a defense unlike anything in human experience. Achani ships rose from the planet like living beings, moving with impossible grace. Instead of weapons that destroyed, they used technology that simply stopped the human ships from working. Engines shut down. Weapons powered off. Life support continued to function, but the attacking vessels became helpless metal shells floating in space. Over the communication system, Jake's voice reached every ship in the fleet. This is Sergeant Jake Morrison. The beings you came to capture are not weapons to be used. They are people who want to help us become better than we are. They could have destroyed you all, but they chose mercy instead. On the planet's surface, Jake stood with the council of guardians as they demonstrated their true power. Ancient machines rose from hidden places, showing technology that made human science look primitive. Cities that had been hidden revealed themselves, displaying a civilization that spanned multiple star systems. Your choice is simple, Jake continued his broadcast. Leave in peace and report that humanity met a civilization far beyond our current understanding. Or stay and learn what we could become if we choose wisdom over conquest. Victor's voice crackled over the radio. This is impossible. No species is this advanced. They've been watching us for years, Victor, waiting to see if we're ready to join the greater community of civilized species. What you do next determines our answer. The standoff lasted for 3 hours. Then one by one, the human ships began powering down their weapons. Not because they were forced to, but because their crews chose to. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UES Ranger. Lisa's voice came over the communication system. Request permission to transport aboard the HFY vessel for negotiations. Jake smiled. Lisa had somehow convinced Victor to try diplomacy instead of force. The negotiations took weeks, but eventually an agreement was reached. The HFY would gradually share some of their technology with humanity, but only for peaceful purposes. Humans who proved themselves worthy could come to new HFY to learn. In return, humanity would help the HFY make contact with other species who might be ready for their guidance. Jake became the first human ambassador to the HFY people. He learned their language, studied their history, and helped establish the exchange programs that would change both civilizations. 5 years later, Jake stood in the great hall where he had first met the Council of Guardians. Beside him was Finn, who had become the leader of the Guardian program that now worked with dozens of different species across the galaxy. "Do you ever regret your choice?" Finn asked through their mental link, which had grown stronger over the years. Jake looked out at the city where humans and HFY now worked side by side, building a future neither species could have achieved alone. "Never," Jake said. "Choosing you was the best decision I ever made." Through the great windows, they could see ships from many different worlds arriving at New HFY. The galaxy was slowly becoming